Hello and welcome to episode 10 of the Unknown Comics, the Unknown Gaming podcast.
Yeah, gaming.
Yes.
That's what this one's about.
That's what this one's about.
That's what the green background means.
Making sure we're recording, making sure everything's going out. Yes. Yay. And we're live for the first time on the gaming podcast.
On Twitch?
On Twitch.
To three viewers. Good morning, everybody.
Oh, that was you. I was like, somebody said good morning. Oh, that was us. Womp womp. All right. Well, thanks for joining us this morning. So, of course, I'm Brandon. That's Chris. Tanner. Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Morning.
And today we're going to focus on tabletop role-playing games. So not computer role-playing games. Not the same. Sort of, but not really.
As close as you could get between the two different experiences.
Yeah, and to differing degrees. But so like I said, of all the tabletop gaming genres, we have miniatures, we have board games, card games, just tons of genres. We went over all that last week. Role playing games is kind of the most eclectic of them all, right?
I think it's your outside of just a normal board game, it's your most classic thing.
And we're kind of going through, I would say we're going through like a role-playing renaissance thanks to Stranger Things.
Yeah, Stranger Things and, things like Critical Role that have made streaming role-playing games very popular and people like to watch, especially when you have good game masters and good players that, a lot of those good role-playing game podcasts or streams and stuff, they're actors, right?
Right.
So they know how to really make a story out of it and make characters come alive and stuff. They really get into it. So it's very entertaining to watch, much like, improv theater, right?
Right.
Which is really what it kind of comes down to in a lot of cases. But just because, they're really good at it and really professional doesn't mean the average person that's not can enjoy it.
Right.
So there's just so many different ways you can do role playing. We'll put the little graphic up. That's my little graphic. Of course, the staple of most RPGs is the multitude of the polyhedral dice that you'll use. Not every game. Some games use just D6s. Yep. Shadowrun was one of those that was just D6s.
Iron Kingdoms used to be that way, but they're going back to 5th edition.
Right.
Yeah.
Vampire
Kickstarter's up now
Vampire used exclusively D10s. So different role-playing games are different. Of course, the king daddy of them all is Dungeons and Dragons, and it
D&D.
Focus.
And I would say Pathfinder is kind of up there still as well.
Well, Pathfinder was built off of
D&D.
D&D's 3.5 edition.
Yeah.
3.5. So of course, D&D focuses mainly on the D20, but adding in the rest of them for other roles and things like that nature. But part of the fun of role-playing game is collecting dice. I don't know what it is about dice.
By far the best part.
We just bought 500 dice, and I'm so excited about it because they're going to be
all the shiny
custom.
number rocks.
Now we can get some. I saw D10s, right? That I could
we
also
can do 10s.
customs. So we might do some D10s too.
Yeah. D20s are hard to put logos on because the faces are too small unless you did
like oversized ones or something.
Get oversized, which you can do it. It's just the logo needs to be very minimalist, I think. Kind of like what you've seen on like the Infinity, the ones that they pack in where it has the unit logo on the one or the faction logo, but they're very minimalized versions of those logos.
We just put a U on the 20 or something.
I mean,
U.
That wouldn't get confusing at all. There's a letter on this number dice now. But anyway, of course, a general staple of most role-playing games, in addition to rolling dice, is the character sheet, right? That's kind of the hallmark, right? It's that creation before the game that people.
Now for me, I've done everything you can think of as far as tabletop. I've never done role-playing games. So
now I've never.
You can explain this to me as I've never done it.
So typically, in the most generic sense, a tabletop role playing game consists of one or multiple players who are playing a story that is facilitated by a game master. In D&D, they call it a dungeon master. In other games, the World of Darkness, it's a storyteller. Right? It's that same person, and that person is there solely to curate the experience. They're not necessarily adversarial. Depends on the
Depends
game
on your
master,
group, yeah.
right. Some game masters just are adversarial, but I think the main point is for them to drive the story, make it engaging for the players, allow the players to have a good amount of agency, but also be able to tell a fun story and engage the players and play a game. Now, so typically what will happen is prior to the first session, the game master will have either created player characters or PCs, or the players themselves will create their PCs, right?
So you either come to the table ready to go, or the game master helps you out.
Yeah, and typically a lot of game masters will do what are called. So I'm actually like cheating towards you, so my neck's not craning over. Typical game masters will host what they call a session 0. Okay, a session 0 is a good chance for the game master to kind of get a feel for the group and what they're expecting from the experience, kind of what their limits are, like what things you may not want to comfortably explore, things of like adult nature,
That, and then a lot of people will decide where where all the players are going to start out, because a lot of times it's not very much fun when you start at level 1.
So we're saying as far as where their character role starts at.
So you might go ahead and let the characters start out at level 3 or something.
So they have some upgrades and whatever.
Yeah, it just depends. A lot of times if you're introducing new players to a game, the game master may just go ahead and have pre-generated characters and just do like what you would call a one-shot session, right?
Yeah.
Where this session's
a practice run.
Yeah, the character. There's not going to be an ongoing campaign. We're going to play with these characters one time, and then the next time we meet, now you have a better idea of how the game plays.
You can figure out, hey, you want to do a mage or
yes,
this
exactly.
Or that. Yeah.
Oh, hey, he played that character. That actually looks like more like what I'd want to do. I'll roll to that.
Yeah.
So that's always a good idea to kind of onboard people into a role playing game, and one shots are fun because there's no
expectation.
Well,
that you have to be back every week.
Yeah. That's just what I was about to say. That's really good for people who just the schedules are hard to get.
Yeah. They enjoy it, but it just doesn't always work out.
If your group plays one shots, then whoever shows up this week can play. The story's over. You don't have to worry about catching people up or explaining why this character's not there or stuff like that.
Right. So generally during the session 0, of course, after the game master kind of tells everybody this is what the session's going to be like, or this is what the campaign's going to be like. These are everybody's boundaries. Nobody wants to do anything super sexualized or whatever. Comfortable with that. People will create their characters, and the game master can kind of facilitate and help that. Right? Mm-hmm. They can help the characters or help the players get their characters created. Kind of what limitations they may or may not have.
Depending on the trustworthiness of your players, you might want to be sure we do that all in person together.
Yeah, if you've got people that are going to try to game a system, then you just need to evaluate whether or not they need to be playing, right? Yeah. But then everybody creates their characters. Then maybe you have a small little session about, before we get started, how do the characters know each other, or how are we going to link everything together? What's their backgrounds? Yeah. And basically to allow everybody to kind of get an idea of what your character is. So that way, when you hit the ground running in the first session, that kind of baseline's already started, and then you go from there.
Yeah, and I'll have to say, I've overheard plenty of these, and I mean, you really have to find some people that are like-minded to you, because some of the groups I've heard, it's just a little much for me, and then I've seen some other people say, yeah, I mean, we have a group and we're not too far out. It just kind of depends on how far your group wants to go as far as the acting.
So in a lot of RPGs, there's a couple of spectrums that you have to look at. The first one is what the actual tabletop aspect is going to look like. Is it going to be very board game in nature, where you have dungeons set up and you're moving miniatures and you're counting out spaces and you're counting out ranges and stuff, and almost making it very much like a tactical miniatures game? Versus on the opposite side of the spectrum, which we would kind of call theater of the mind's eye, right? Where everything's very abstract. Even if you do combat at all, a role-playing game like Vampire the Masquerade, you may not even
need anything.
You may not even do combat at all.
Yeah.
It may be very political or social interactions, in its nature, because Vampire kind of lends itself not to just being the hack and slash, I'm the hero, kill everything, right? Whereas D&D is. But even in D&D, you can very much play it without a miniature or or terrain or
You can do
anything on the table.
Character sheet might be all you need.
Exactly, and it's just all in your head, and you're kind of like, well, how far away am I from this guy? You're close enough to run over and hit him with your sword, kind of a thing, and you play it that way. So you kind of have to find from your group where they want to play. Do they need that tactile visual representation? If you do that, you kind of have to understand that you're kind of constrained now to what the game master can produce on the table, right? He can't call when you're dealing with a lot of physical tiles and miniatures and stuff. It's limited to what kind of audibles and how the game master can kind of change the story.
Yeah, I mean, you're putting a lot more tangible assets in the way of what could be creative.
Yeah,
that's the way I prefer it anyway, is the more...
I mean, it could be more structured. You could have people that want more structure.
What a lot of people do is you play the campaign up to the boss fight, very open narrative. Then when you get to the area where your big fight's going to be, that's when it starts to be more like a board game.
Yes. Yeah. And
kind of a hybrid of the two styles.
So what's the head count here? Like, what's a good head count?
A lot of it depends on the game, and it depends on the game master. I think a lot of it depends on how well everybody plays. I generally, personally, for me, I like having a couple of players plus the game master. Having one player in the game master, you can make it work.
Yeah, it's just not as much bantering there, right?
No, yeah. It's very much the game master talking at one person, and sometimes that can get awkward. So at least 3 with the game master 2 players. I personally, when I've game mastered, if I run over 4 or 5 players, it can get a little daunting, and you have to worry about downtime for the other players.
Yeah, and see, that for me was like the couple groups I'm saying that I've seen are way too much. I mean, there was probably like 11 people sitting at a table just yelling at each other, and I'm just like, whoa, like that's intense. I mean, I'm good for them being able to keep it all, but
yeah,
man, I mean, you probably had some side quests
real
going
quick,
on over there.
Since we're live, real quick, I want to kind of jump out. For those that are watching live, go ahead and get in on the conversation. What are some of your favorite role playing games or styles or everything? Post in the Twitch comments. Let us know, and we'll relay that here. But like what Tanner said, you can definitely make a hybrid, right? It's theater of the mind's eye at this part, but when we get to combat, and a lot of game masters, they sell dry erase boards that have grid on it, right? And so he can real quick draw out a map. And he may not even need miniatures for the baddie bads. He just kind of writes where they are. So that gives him a little bit more of a...
I've seen some people that do interactive maps on TV screens.
Oh,
yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm definitely the person that would spend months getting prepared for one game just to have this elaborate dungeon.
Yeah.
But and to that, if you do that, now you have to find ways to keep your players on the rails for that, or else... all your prep is for naught if all of a sudden they decide to go off into left field, right?
Right.
So, a good game master knows how to
yell like, no,
I made it. That's right. And there's points where you either have to like force them, you have to be creative in how to kind of steer them back without. It's almost like Inception. You have to make it think they're
put the idea in their head.
Yeah. Think it's their idea. So that's 2 spectrums. So very, very tangible, tactical versus theater of the mind's eye. Then the other spectrum is in character versus out of character role playing, and this is very much a comfortability thing with your players. It's a pretty safe assumption that if somebody's new to role playing and doesn't have like theater experience, they're going to want to play their characters primarily out of character.
And I think this is where a lot of people get intimidated out of the games.
Yes.
It's the reason why I haven't played in-person stuff.
Right.
Just because I'm not an actor. I want to play my miniature as the character.
Yeah.
Just because that's what I'm comfortable with. So I've done some online role play stuff just a little bit where... basically, it all takes place within a Facebook group, and the admin of the group is essentially the game master.
Right.
Players do as they will throughout the comment stream, and really, the only rule is if there's a dispute as to what happens, the admin gets to resolve it. Yeah, has final say.
Right.
So I've done stuff like that, and I've read rule books.
Yeah.
I've read all the 5th edition stuff. I've read all the Iron Kingdom stuff. But finding that group is the hardest part, to find like-minded people. And in this aspect, are we going to play in character or are we going to play out of character?
Now, one good thing about that is it doesn't have to be.
You could hybrid that too.
You
right?
you can hybrid that too, right? The players that are comfortable speaking in their character's voice and speaking very first person can do that and still interact with the people that. Well, this is how my character reacts. He says this, and this. It's really, it's just a flip of, some people talking first person, some talking third person, right? And making that, comfortable, as comfortable as possible. The more fun ones to watch are generally, players that are in character, and that are really focused on the narrative.
It's that personality.
Yes, but yeah, they have personalities that are built for that. Not all your players will, and you're doing yourself a disservice if you're trying to force people into that, right? They're not going to do it well.
Yeah, and I think it doesn't have to take away.
No,
I think it's just, again, it's like, if you're having fun, you're having fun. If it's good for everybody, it's good for everybody, no matter which way they go about it.
Right. Yeah. So there's so many different ways right now. COVID has kind of illuminated a lot of things about role playing, in that virtual tabletops that have been around for years, Fantasy Grounds, Roll20. There's some new ones coming around, Foundry, Abyssal. There's a lot of virtual tabletop simulator is one of those as well.
Which Brandon just found out something cool. He was excited about.
Oh man, I'll explain that in here in a second. But
he's like a little kid. He's so excited.
So the rise of virtual tabletop spiked a lot just this past year, just because that social aspect of role playing games. But come to find out, role playing games are probably the easiest to go virtual with, very much more so than a miniature war game.
Absolutely.
Right, because you can play the whole game through text.
Yeah.
You can still use your character, your sheets, all that kind of stuff.
But
you're
you
just
can
waiting on somebody else to get.
But
back
those virtual
to you.
tabletops still allow for that grid base, even if you want that board game, miniature game tactical feel. Those VTTs can still do that.
Yeah.
And probably, because you don't most tabletop role playing games don't need like line of sight and inches range measurement. It's usually grid based, so it's pretty easy to do that for a virtual tabletop versus something like Infinity or Warhammer, where you're measuring, which
and I would say that
you can still do. And
the virtual would be a lot easier for someone to get into it with as a new player.
Scheduling wise, yeah.
Well, not only schedule wise, but how much easier
It's got a
is
lot of
it?
the construct already there for you.
Well, how much easier is it to type in first person than it is to
Yeah.
if you're not comfortable with that, but you want to really try to get into it, but you're just not there. It's so much easier to type in first person.
And also, to add to that, the rise of Discord and voice chat programs and stuff like that has made just, opening your laptop up and actually still having that face-to-face voice interaction, has made it way easier. So it's really opened up now. As far as role-playing games, there's a role-playing game out there for someone. There's a setting or a style. I've played a ton over my many years.
So what's your favorite timeline, genre, character sheets? Like, as far as you've got Star Wars all the way to D&D. I mean, you've got all these different types. So
oh man, so probably my favorite system mechanically to play with has to be, it's called Savage Worlds. Okay. It is what you call kind of a universal system, in that you have, which, 5e is technically a system, right? And then you can actually tag a setting onto that.
Yeah.
Savage Worlds is one.
Does it work with 5e? So you're saying?
No.
Okay.
No. It is its own game system completely.
Okay.
It just has its own way of doing things. It's kind of Savage Worlds lends itself to very pulp, actiony type settings, right? Things like Indiana Jones, or it's based off. Savage Worlds was developed by a company, Pinnacle, that had originally made a role playing game called Deadlands. And for those that don't know, Deadlands it's an awesome setting. It's called a Weird West setting. Basically, it's a horror western genre. They made Deadlands. Then they made a miniatures tabletop game in the Deadlands universe called Great Rail Wars. And they liked the system they made for that so well that they took that and made a role-playing game system out of it. But then, coming full circle, they made a Deadlands setting for that new role-playing system that they made. So it like kind of just like morphed into this thing, but it plays really quick. You actually use playing cards to do like initiative and stuff, which kind of fit the theme a lot. Like your dice, there's a dice mechanic called exploding, to where, you know, if you roll the highest number on that dice, you get to roll it again. So like that's kind of anything can happen.
Real similar to how Iron Kingdoms started as a D&D rule set, which evolved into a tabletop game, which they took the rules for the tabletop game to make their own rule set for the role-playing game, and now the role-playing game is going back to
fifth edition, which
that's probably the one that I was most interested in.
Yeah.
Because I started my whole tabletop gaming venture with War Machine.
Right.
So, for one, the rule set just already made sense. I already basically knew the rules.
Right.
Yeah.
But what you could do with it is, especially if you had all your players create warcasters, you play the campaign, then you get to a big battle and you just play War Machine.
Yeah.
To do the battle, and then you go back to the role play.
Yeah, and that's also one of the great things about role playing games is just like any board game, you can house rule stuff and do custom, custom rules for settings. So some of your popular ones, you've got D&D, both 5e, 4e is still mildly popular. 4e kind of 4th ed D&D was very much for that tactical board gamer. It was a lot about action combos and stuff like that. Then 3.5/ I kind of lump Pathfinder into that, right?
Yeah.
Because Pathfinder is that evolution of 3.5. Pathfinder, Starfinder. Those are still kind of your big ones. You still have the World of Darkness for vampire and werewolf and all those. Those have been around forever. Savage Worlds is a big one still. And then Cyberpunk is kind of getting a resurgence. The video game has they released a new version of the tabletop role-playing game.
People are trying to find a version of the game they actually like to play.
I enjoyed the video game. It's buggy. And
But what do you
Has
play
it
on?
actually gotten better? Just
played
kind
on
of an
PC.
aside.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's gotten better.
I haven't seen much on it since it's at the whole debacle.
The whole company's just been hit
I
all sides.
only have a PlayStation, and everything I've heard is PlayStation 1 is still
can't-
basically unplayable.
You can't buy it right now.
Yeah, I think they took it off the market.
They took it off the market.
Yeah.
You can't buy it. Yeah. So yeah, one of the original Cyberpunks. Those systems were great. Shadowrun was another one of my favorite ones, and I think I like Shadowrun more so for the setting than I really did the mechanics of the game. So Shadowrun is Cyberpunk plus D&D smashed together. So it's that Cyberpunk future plus fantasy kind of blended together. There's really been role-playing games for almost every setting.
Yeah.
Star Wars has had 3 different role-playing games over the years.
So that's one of the beautiful things about Dungeons and Dragons is they actually encourage independent publishers to publish 5th edition.
They didn't
expansions.
always.
Well, they do now.
They do now. Yeah.
They do now.
Well, and they also.
Well, I mean, it's just going to bring them back to that common knowledge. You could pick up D&D and basically play it no matter what because you know the
Right.
game.
Right. So anything you can imagine, you can play in 5th edition.
Yeah, but Savage Worlds is that same way, right? It's the bones of a mechanic system, and then you plug a setting on top of it. GURPS was that way. I think it's the generic universal role-playing system. That's why it's called GURPS,
Okay.
right? So that's not a new concept. 3.5 did it. They licensed. It was just called the D20 system back then when it was 3.5. That's how Pathfinder started. Is they licensed the D20 system. Paizo was making modules for 3.5, and then Wizards decided to discontinue 3.5 to move on to 4E, and Paizo was like, well, we'll just make our own core set. And so they kind of did Pathfinder is like 3.75, right?
Yeah, it's somewhere in between.
They just kind of refined 3.5, and then they just took it and it kind of just made its own branch, right? So yeah, I've never actually played Pathfinder. I barely played 3.5. I played.
I had really wanted to start trying to do because I'd never been something to do. So I've read quite a few of the Pathfinder books. Now it's been quite a while since I have, so I don't really remember much about it. But I mean, as far as creating character sheets and that kind of stuff, but I've never.
Yeah, and you still see kind of that core DNA when you look at Fifth Ed, 5e versus Pathfinder. There's still some very similar aspects. Of course, they have the same roots, right?
Yeah.
I remember playing AD&D, which is second edition. I would not go back and play that. At the time, it was great because that's all we had. Mm-hmm. Now it is a very clunky, horrible system. Like you had to do so much math just to do a 2-hit roll in your head. So what's your armor class? It's -6, and that's good. Oh yeah, that's real good. A negative? Yeah. It just it kind of defied logic. There were some other great settings that I played. Was one called Rifts. It's kind of like a multiversal sci-fi game. Its kind of mechanics were kind of not great, but it was a great setting. There's a lot of games where they either have great settings but not great rule sets, or great rule sets but not just kind of bland settings.
So for somebody getting into it, what would be the best? Should they look for something they're already interested in and see if there's a role-playing game for that, or just try to go into one of these other things?
That's a great question.
Because I would think if you already have an interest, then it was easier for you to get into those.
Well, I think a lot of it is what do you have available in your area.
I think honestly, right? Yeah, the first thing you need to find is a group of people to play.
Online that's much easier, right?
Right.
Your player pool is significantly bigger when you're playing online. I would say I think a lot of it is just finding a good game master. I think a good game master can make any role-playing game.
Listening in Amarillo, we're recruiting a game master.
Yes.
Yeah, so we kind of pitched the idea back and forth last week after the show.
Yeah.
Of playing some on the channel.
Yeah. So
we want your guys' input as far as what do you want to see? What setting do you want to see? Is it even worth our time to do it? Yeah. Would you guys watch it? So let us know in the comments. You can comment right now if you're watching live, or if you're watching this after it's been released on YouTube. Let us know in the comments. What do you guys want to see from this?
Yeah. So D&D 5th edition is super popular right now. You're not going to have a hard time finding a game online.
Yeah.
It is.
Yeah, get to your local store.
Yeah.
They should be able to hopefully help you.
It's your traditional kind of high fantasy setting, so if you're a fan of Lord of the Rings or, any of those kind of the typical fantasies, you'll definitely be right at home there. Star Wars, the most recent Star Wars role-playing game is the Fantasy Flight versions, which is technically 3 different games, but they kind of share a core mechanics, so they can kind of interplay. So you have Edge of the Empire, Age of Rebellion, and Force and Destiny. Those kind of come together to become kind of a universal role-playing system that uses Fantasy Flight's Genesis system, which that uses custom dice to kind of. It's a neat mechanic system in that you build a pool of dice of different colors, different shapes, and everything. But what you roll are symbols, and these symbols, can mean that you succeed or fail at a task. But in addition to succeeding and failing, other things can happen inside of the dice roll. So you can succeed at something, but something not so great can still happen. And so the game master and the player have to work together to kind of figure out what that is. And it can create some really cool narrative moments. Or you can fail at something, but still have something okay happen. And it's a really interesting way of kind of driving the narrative. And that's different than just, I succeeded at this role or I failed at this role.
Yeah.
Now it's, I succeeded, but there was a cost. Mm-hmm. Or I didn't succeed, but there's still hope that something good can come of it. So it's a pretty interesting system. Fantasy Flight's all about custom dice for a lot of their games.
Well, they're all about custom almost everything. I mean, they've got custom-sized cards. So you can only get custom-sized sleeves, which is, it's a business aspect. It's
like
genius.
Hey, guess who sells sleeves? Fantasy Flight.
Yeah.
I mean, it is cool, but at the same time, it's one more thing you're keeping a potential person from playing.
Yeah.
Because they can't just go buy regular dice.
They do have conversion charts where you can use normal dice, and you have a chart that says, "Oh,
I'm sure
this
there's an
number
app
is
for
the
that.
symbol." There is an app actually. Yep, there's a virtual die roller that you can download and use for all their. Now, and of course, they built the Genesis system as a generic system that you can tack on. So, like their Android setting, that was what the Netrunner card game was based in. They have a role-playing system for that. And then their Terranoth, that Descent, and all those games are off. They have a role-playing system that you can plug into there. That's kind of the very much the new style, is building a rule set and then being able to plug settings on top of that. Like I said, it's been around for a while, but now it's getting way more popular.
It very much makes sense because role playing is all about making stuff up.
Yeah.
So,
and on top of that, for new game masters, so we're not just talking to potential players. For people that want to run games, there are pre-generated adventures that you can run, right? And you can
It kind of help you
Yeah.
see what you need to do eventually if you're going to create your own.
Exactly. And so you can run through these adventures. I mean, honestly, the early days of Dungeons and Dragons, the game master really just read the adventure
Right.
and pulled everybody through it, right? He just knew the information that they couldn't know yet. Then what you had creative game masters that were just layering on top of that, right? And honestly, you can have a good time if you have that kind of game master that all they're doing is just running you through the adventure. It's all in just getting together and having a good time. You don't have to be great at it, right?
Right.
As long as and really what really drives a role-playing game session down are just toxic players, right? That they're either basically stealing all the kind of the spotlight in the game to themselves, or they're just causing grief. They're trying to grief the game master by really throwing him off, and I don't want to go on this adventure. I want to, hit on the bar winch.
It's the one guy that creates a chaotic evil character in a group full of paladins.
Yeah, stuff like that. But that is something that's something like a session 0 can really help you weed out, right? The game master is going to know pretty early on, this guy's just not going to.
Yeah.
So you do one of two things. You pull him aside and say, hey, if you want to be a part of this group, this is what's expected of you, because they're shared expectations, right?
Right.
And you have to kind of dictate those expectations ahead of time. That's what a session 0 is great for. Hey guys, I've made this adventure. It's very curated. I'm going to try to kind of keep you on rails because I think there's a really good story here. I'll try to, to do the improv thing where it's the yes and, but at the end of the day, I want to kind of keep y'all.
Because you want it to be fun for everybody.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of times people are only thinking about the players. The players want to explore the universe or whatever. But a lot of times the game master has a story that they want to tell.
They want to have fun too.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And if game masters aren't having fun, you're not going to have a game master.
Yeah.
And
you're not going to have a game.
It's good to set that expectation right up front.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, awesome. Just awesome things. That can happen. Like I said, some of my favorite role playing games in the past. Sometimes we just go off the rails, and just do stupid, weird stuff. And we don't have miniatures or anything. We're just kind of just talking through a story, and we may not even roll dice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The mechanics of the game are there to just kind of help give some boundaries to the world, what you can and can't do. But if everybody's just kind of there and going with it, you can literally just kind of tell this shared story, right? And then at the end of it, you look back on, you'll just have those memories. Hey, remember when that happened? You won't remember, hey, you may remember some dice rolls, just like in a miniatures game, right?
Yeah.
Those critical dice rolls and stuff like that. And then you'll have those times where you're mad at your dice and you want to punish them, just like in a miniature war game.
That wall, you now throwing.
You do the what I call the shame, where you line up all your dice and you take the bad one and you smack it with a hammer in front of the rest of them.
Or you stick it in the microwave and turn it on.
Yeah. Just so the rest of the dice.
It's not
know.
metallic ones.
Yeah, don't burn your house down.
No, so what Chris was talking about earlier. There is a website called Hero Forge where you can basically make your own
Miniature
3D miniature, right? And they have different materials that you can make it in, generic plastic or bronze or whatever. But you can also have it export to an SDL so you can 3D print it if you want. But you can also have it exported to Tabletop Simulator.
Yeah, which
is-
Brandon got super excited.
I'm super
about.
excited about it because I do stuff in Tabletop Simulator all the time.
Yeah.
Mostly miniatures games. It's $8 per miniature, so I'm not going to do it to try to. I'm not going to do a bunch of them.
That's still not bad for a 3D model.
No, a 3D model that you color. So, like, if you are going to play a tabletop role-playing game online and you really want that miniature to look very specifically, that's a really neat idea to do that and then bring it into
The cool
a
thing about
3D
this
space.
is they even have these 3D ones. Like if you're not a hobbyist and you wanted a physical 3D printed one, they do have ones that come colored. Which
Yeah,
is
they
pretty
3D
cool.
print in multiple colors. It
Yeah.
was really neat to see at on Hero Forge. So, so
Like
yeah.
It's come way far since when they started. Because I looked into them a little bit when they very first started, and they were all very board gamey,
Yeah.
static pose.
Oh man, there are so many. Yeah. So I guess the next step for us is to figure out what setting we want to do.
Yeah, that's the problem is there's just a ton out there.
We may have to like roll a dice, give some options.
Hey, there you go.
You know, and
Just put like a chart of 6 up, and hey, this is what we're going with.
yeah, and just find like a one-shot adventure or something to
Yep.
do in it. Yeah, and that'd just be the first one, and then move on from there. So again, you know, guys, like Tanner said, you know, would you be interested in seeing us do that? If you're local to Amarillo, would you be interested in participating in that and potentially being a game master? One thing, you know, if you're going to be a game master, there's some prep work to it. Even if you're running just a pre-made adventure, there's still some considerations. So
Some homework.
one thing I do always recommend for people that play role-playing games is tip your game master. They put a lot of time and effort, especially depending on how good they are. They put a lot of time and effort, and they generally buy a lot of materials with their own pocket. Just be cool, or at least
A
buy their,
volunteer's tribute.
or at least buy
I'm
their
getting tips.
or at least buy their dinner, something like that. But
I've always thought it would be good to, if you have a group, almost have like a club fee. Everybody chips in so much to pay for the materials, terrain,
Or
whatever
if
you're
you've got
going
a
to
good
do.
group, it wouldn't even be that much money.
And what's
Right.
cool is
Yeah.
you can also, if you have a consistent group, you can almost kind of pull your money to make like a library of all the different source books and stuff like that.
Right.
Because something like 5e has a lot of different books that they tag
there's
on.
3 books for just the core set.
Right.
You got the player's book, you got the game master book, and you got the monster manual.
Yep. Yeah, those are your 3 main in the kind of the D&D universe. A lot of other games they have one kind of unified book. I still don't know why they split the Dungeon Master Guide and the Player's Handbook, but I get it. Just whatever.
Because the dungeon
called
master is a
Fedia.
secret for everybody that's not a dungeon master.
Well, you just don't turn to that part of the book. That's what every other role playing system does. So again, what are y'all's favorite settings? Definitely leave a comment below. What's your favorite style? What's your favorite memory of a role playing game that you've had? Definitely put that in the comments and stuff like that. So Tanner, what can we expect from the gaming channel this week?
So we have the wood for our table. It's sitting in the other room. So hopefully we'll have some time to get that put together, get it painted and finished and looking nice. Chris has ordered us some game mats. We've got some dice coming. I've been working on some armies. So we're going to have some more actual let's see the games kind of content
Brandon's
coming.
brought Marvel Champions up. Might be getting some of that going down.
I've been reading through the Kill Teams rule books.
Kill Team.
Of course, we've obviously been talking about role playing stuff today. We're looking for your guys' input on how we should go forth with that.
Yeah.
So big things happening.
Any unboxes or reveal videos this week?
We have boxes of stuff to do.
Yeah.
It's all going to come down to what time we have because we've got 2 big signings coming up for our comics channel.
Right.
Also, so those take up a lot of time.
Yeah. Well, Chris, where can they find us?
Yeah, so if you are looking for Unknown Comics on social media, you can find us on Facebook at Unknown Comic Books, on Instagram at Unknown Comic Books. Of course, we're on Twitter at Unknown_Comics, and we're on Pinterest as well. You can look for Unknown Comics there. If you're looking to check out our website, check out our exclusive covers, of course, gaming product, you can find us at unknowncomicbooks.com. And then, of course, if you're listening, thanks. Listening on the podcast on Audible or Spotify or iTunes.
We do have an Unknown Gaming group on Facebook,
Yeah,
so you
I
can
forget about that every single time.
request to join that. Me and Chris will we'll let you in there, and
We'll vet you.
we can strike up a conversation in there.
There we go. Well, guys, thanks for joining us for episode 10 of the Unknown Gaming Podcast. We'll be back next week at the exact same time. We'll be back again live on Twitch at 10 a.m. Central, so don't forget to join us and join in the conversation. As more of us kind of get in here, it'll be much more of a party. And so we look forward to joining you then. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, guys.
Later.